Welcome to another installment of the European Herpetoculture Podcast. In this episode, we are joined by Finn, not a guest, so that's really cool. And with Finn, we discuss a whole range of topics. We talk about how experiences shape the way we approach our hobby now. We talk about plants and their care and what is needed to make them thrive in our hobby. And of course, we talk about European herpetoculture and what that actually means. And I think we had a great conversation thus far. So I hope you enjoy it too. This episode is hosted by Till, our plant guy, and myself. And let me know what you think. Welcome everybody to another episode of the European Herpetoculture Podcast. Today we are welcoming another guest, and that's going to be Finn. Welcome, Finn.
Hello, hello.
Hola, hola. Okay, Finn, thank you so much for joining us. We are really looking forward to have you as our guest and to talk to you about a whole lot of different topics. But before we are going to get into that, maybe it's nice for the listener to know who you are. So I'm very curious about a little bit of your history in the hobby of herpetoculture and also what got you to the point you are now.
Yeah. So currently I'm 25 years old. I'm living in Germany again, in Düsseldorf. And I've been doing this hobby for quite some time. I think, if I remember correctly, I mean, there's even photos of me collecting insects from, the ground when I was like, I don't know, a toddler or so. So I think that doesn't count. But when it comes to actively keeping animals and insects, especially insects, that's how I started with invertebrates, with phasmids, that is. So stick insects, I think when I was, I don't know, like 8, maybe even younger or so. And that's what got me into the hobby mainly. Also, I think a big influence back then as a kid was the Aqua Zoo, the Lübbecke Museum, which is a natural history museum, or generally a nature museum in Düsseldorf. And they always had super cool displays. Like they made really good guides and, showing you around, explaining you how biology and nature works. And that always fascinated me. And I, well, to the displease of my mother, started keeping insects. That was always a very big thing. My whole family doesn't like insects. They don't like what I'm doing. Well, at least in the beginning.
Disappointment of the family.
Yeah, exactly.
We all know that. Don't worry.
Stop playing around with bugs. Yeah, and I mean, I think I had since I'm 8, I started, breeding those phasmids and so on. And I think with 11 or so, I got my first mantis, and that was like a huge, a ground stone for my future career in the hobby, because I always loved mantids, and they're a little bit more fun than phasmids. They don't just hang around all day and eat leaves. They actually go and prey on other stuff. So that was when I started with insects. And I think the next big step was when I moved out with I think 18 or 19 or something like that. And the limitations of what I could have and not were just lifted. So before that, I were able to have a lot of insects in my room. And when I moved out, I think the first thing I got, was a chameleon. And so I basically stepped out of this, just having insects in a box, going to a big terrarium with actually a lizard in it. And from there on, it went a little bit wild. I got my first plants from a friend of mine, traded with him for some mantids. Then I had some plants, loved the tropical plants, actually begonias. I think the first begonia I actually had was Begonia metacroa. I'm not sure if it is still called metacroa. It is a hybrid, if I reckon correctly. And then I had a terrarium full with tropical plants. At some point I thought, there should be something living in there. And then I got into dart frogs. And that's pretty much right now what I still have. I still, to this day, have frogs and plants. All the other stuff I started over the last few years to get rid of. But I think we will get to that point at some point in this podcast. So yeah, that is the introduction right now from where I started until now.
It's funny that you mentioned the Aqua Zoo Lübbecke Museum because
for a reason though. For a reason. We might cycle back to that at some point. Yeah.
They're great. As some of you may know or recognized in the last episode, I'm also living in Düsseldorf. and my grandparents were from Düsseldorf, and the Aqua Zoo was also a zoo that I visited pretty often as a child. And I
Yeah.
also did an internship for 2 weeks there.
Oh,
and
no
this
way.
was a very great time.
Yeah, okay, that's cool.
Took care of the Shinisaurus, and I was so
Yeah.
in love, still in love with this species.
That's pretty
Yeah.
cool. Yeah, I wanted to do an intern after school too, but they were like, it was super. There were so many people interested in it, then I had to wait for like half a year or something like that. And, you know, then it was still not clear if they would even give me that, you know, job or whatever they offered me. But I am currently right now trying to get back like to them.
Nice.
And well, I mean, they are looking for someone who is who can take care of their media, and also someone who has a little bit of botany skills, which, you know, without tooting in my own horn, that is me. And so yeah,
Nice.
I'm trying to get into the Aqua Zoo right now, but you know, no real progress to announce yet, but it is in progress.
That's so
Yeah.
cool.
Sounds good.
It's so funny.
Maybe.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I wanted to say maybe if you get the job, Stefan can film something for his YouTube there.
There's like, let's don't get started about that, because I'm hyped myself, because if I get my foot in the door there, this will open a lot of opportunities for not only me, but also like a lot of other people. So yeah, we will see how that goes.
Nice.
Very
Fingers
cool.
crossed.
It's actually funny that one of my first memories of like a reptile zoo or reptile like museum was also called Aqua Zoo.
Oh really? But in
Yeah,
a
it
different,
was.
like it's not the same, right?
No, it's
like
not the same. It was in
okay.
Leerdam, close to my home, and they had like sharks and emerald skinks. So this is very funny. So I do wonder. I definitely want to get into the plants with you. That's one of the big reasons Till is also joining, of course, our plant guy. But why was this Aqua Zoo so important for you? Because you just said it was quite.
Yeah. No, I mean, as a kid, first of all, I think well, I mean, that is a little bit controversial, but I personally hate zoos. I absolutely hate zoos. And I also dislike a lot of what is happening in the hobby and how the hobby is being displayed on top. Like not only how people are doing certain things, but also how it is presented to the public. We always have, you know, the problem with PETA and whoever, you know, talking about how animals have to be protected and kept right and so on. And while I do not support them, I do think they have a point. And the Aqua Zoo, in my opinion, is one of the prime examples of well-executed captivity and also, you know, sharing knowledge, which is super important, especially for children. Like if you have children, the earlier you get them into sports, science, and you know how important nature is, the better. Like you just lay the grounds down for a good person, if you want to say it like that. And the Aqua Zoo always did a great job. They have always amazing looking displays. The animals look great. Obviously, I can't really see behind the care. They could also just swap out the dead animals every day. But from what I know, they you know, you can see if you have a little bit of experience and you know how much, for example, with reef tanks. If you will go to the Aqua Zoo, they might not have crazy designer corals or so, but what they have is in really good condition. Everything is looking very healthy. Everything is clean. You know, like you can definitely see that there's a lot of work and also passion and love flowing into this project. And I think that is one thing that always really, just astonished me, because you don't see it that often, no matter where you are, no matter if you're in America or in Europe. Zoos normally suck. So, and the Aqua Zoo they don't have any animals where, like a giraffe or elephant, where keeping them on a standard that is at least good, you know, or at least keeps the animal happy. They don't have many of those animals. Most of the animals they have, maybe not the craziest stuff. You're not gonna, you know, explode when you see, like, they don't have any crazy frog species that you never see or so. But what they have, they care great for, and they also, you know, breed stuff and such, which is, you know, the best sign for someone who's doing their job well. And they've been around for forever, and they don't, like, still until this day, they redone the whole zoo a little bit, and it just looks good. There's a lot of effort going into this, and this is always what personally makes me super happy to see if people really put love and effort into their animals and into their enclosures.
Cool. Do you think that spending time at the Aqua Zoo when you were relatively young shaped your like what you are searching for in a zoo, or what keepers do and how it should look? Or do you think that it was just a good example, and the older you got and the more you evolved into your own hobby, did you realize like, hey, the Aqua Zoo actually represents what I enjoy or prefer?
Yeah, I would say that. I mean, shaping, yeah, for sure. I think everything is shaping you, right? Like, I mean, we are in the end the the mold of everything that shaped us, all the experiences and such. And there we go, first headphone. But I think you can take them as a very good example of how a zoo should look, how it should be managed, and definitely, I mean, I wouldn't say that my keeping is influenced by the Aqua Zoo, but the general statement they give you, like the clean, very well organized, animals always healthy and happy. You give them what they need, not just, you don't let them survive, you give them everything they need to thrive. And that's, in my opinion, a very good, standard if you do that in the hobby. It's not about letting something survive, but you want to make it thrive.
Did you make some experiences with other zoos, or was there sort of a tipping point where you decided that you hate the other ones, like you said?
Yeah, I mean, let's say it like that. Every open big zoo, I think I haven't been to a zoo in years where, like, first of all, again, I hate zoos, so I don't visit them. Why would I? Just to be reminded that my free time is wasted and animals are not doing well there. So I'm not like I'm not a resident advisor for zoos, but I definitely know that, for example, going to the Aqua Zoo is a fun thing to do. Even if you have been there like 100 times, going through it is just, it's pleasing. It's nice, it's clean, everything looks good. They have an awesome, I love the way how you'll walk through it and you basically get layered into different, zones of temperatures and animals. And, you have the saltwater corner and then you have the jungle over there and then the insects. It's just a good example of how a zoo should be looking, or how it should be run.
Cool.
Yeah.
Now we should go there.
Yeah, I mean, that would be a very fun podcast with a camera. We just go through there. We just look at everything. No, but it definitely is worth a visit. If you are in Düsseldorf and you have disposable time on your hands and you're like, what could I do? Go to the Aqua Zoo.
Stefan,
Definitely check them out.
Couch is always free for you. So yeah.
Thank you. I love sleeping on your couch.
Yeah. He does.
That's
Everyone does.
That's a fucking lie.
No. Stefan, say something. My couch is great.
Stefan, sag was.
His couch is great, sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so can you maybe then give a description on, like you said, you worked with frogs and plants now. So could you give a bit of a description on like your main focus or animals you're caring for or setups?
Yeah, so currently, since my last shenanigans and my divorce, I moved back to Germany, and unfortunately, I couldn't take any of my inventory with me again. So it's this second time in 4 years where I, let's say it like that, a little bit dramatic, but I lost my whole setup. And coming back from America after that, I had just had a few insects, actually Corydodes, which is the genus of praying mantids that I absolutely love. We could do a whole episode about those if you want to at some point when it comes to, plants and insects correlating and so on. But now right now I made the decision that I don't want to have insects anymore, and I'm just focusing on plants and frogs. Frogs, more specifically on glass frogs. I have Hyalinobatrichum valerioi, and I have Coronella granulosa right now, which are beautiful frogs. If you don't know them, you should definitely check them out. Not for beginners, but beautiful frogs. And I will definitely get Artolopus in the near future again. So that's my plans for now. And I'm prone to going a little bit crazy with my setups. My last apartments didn't really look like there was someone living in them. They looked more like a laboratory. And this is the first time in my life where I have an apartment that actually looks like a human is inhabiting it and not, like, I don't know, 500,000 frogs or so. And
Crazy scientist.
kind of, without the scientists, just crazy. But I am honestly liking that I have less right now. So the few things I have, I can really concentrate on, and also gives me, makes me more flexible. I don't have to tell you, but yeah, I mean, you have a fucking salt water in the background, so you know what I'm talking about. But the more animals and the more stuff that is high maintenance you have, the less you're gonna have time for yourself and so on. And
True.
I do think that reflects in animal quality often too. And we can talk about, I think that is a very good thing to talk about we get like for the part of comparing the European and the American hobby. I think that's where this fits in well. But generally, I do think that a lot of people in the hobby get this craze, which is totally fine. I mean, I've been falling for the craze multiple times in, for different genera and so on. But it definitely helps to have less to, control your quality. And the older I'm getting, the more divorces I'm getting, the more I have the opinion that I would rather have very high quality and very limited quantity. Especially since with plants it's a little bit different. But throughout the last few years, I think I didn't mention that, but I had 2 small businesses. Well, one here, Planted Boxes. Maybe people who have been in the hobby for a little bit longer know Planted Boxes. That was, I think, pre-COVID, slightly pre-COVID, like a year, 2 before COVID, something like that. And was pretty much one of the first, maybe the first shop that offered collector plants. So not just, cool plants for a terrarium, but actually species that people wanted to collect in the plant scene. And since then, I've been, breeding plants very commercially. And it does take away the charm from, having your setup, having plants at home, because it gets more connected to work. So right now, I just have Melastomataceae, Zonarillas I'm focusing on, and the frogs. So less is more sometimes.
Yeah, that's good that you say that, because I think this less is more is something we talked about a lot. I think also on the podcast before, but also with especially Flo and Ben. Yeah, it makes it easier to focus on things. And something Stefan and I talked about in my introduction episode was also because Ben said I could make a business out of the plant thing, and I'm always I see 2 sides of the medal, because I think if I make it too much business wise, I would lose some kind of fun and focus more on what the market wants and not on the things I would like. So I totally get that.
No, I mean, if you have the chance, and for me back then, like my whole apartment again was a terrarium anyways, and I've been pushing out new plants. Like, it wasn't in the beginning, I didn't start plants to make money with them or so. It was just the sheer fascination for them. And then at some point, like I always have, again, if you know me in person, you definitely know that I'm very prone to collect stuff. I love collecting stuff. I just started to basically assemble all the species of plants, mainly begonias back then, that I could just get into my hands. And then again, breeding them with a lot of the species that I got, there was almost no one in Europe having them. Or if the people had them, they, again, kind of the same. They made them survive, but not thrive. And I managed to breed a lot of those species successfully. So back at that point, making a bit, like creating a business, founding a business was a very good time-wise, and also it just fitted into the whole theme. But I do think commercializing plants or the hobby, you definitely lose some. In America, after America, it was pretty clear to me, if I keep going with the hobby as a business, I will slowly but steadily definitely lose my love for it, which again, in the end, is super sad. And you don't want that.
Just for the listeners, you mentioned a divorce and moving back from America. Can you like wrap this up in a little part, just what you want to talk about, but just that the people get why you were
for sure
in Germany, in America, and in Germany?
So I am German. I'm born here. I'm born in Düsseldorf too. So And at some point, throughout my planned session, my planned craze, I met a girl via Instagram, and we started talking, and then at some point we met and fell in love. And at some point during COVID, where everything was going down the drain anyways, and I was just also fed up with all the stuff that was happening here, we decided to just go for it. Like, we just gonna try it out. So the Planted Boxes, the company back then, I owned with my best friend, and he got the whole company basically. And I just, in a split, I don't know how much time I had, was very rushed. It was horrible. I'm not gonna do that again. But I think like in a matter of like 2 months, I got rid of everything I have. A lot of it I just, gifted or like just gave away. And then I moved to America and, started doing plants there again. And then at some point, as it often goes, marriage didn't work out as planned. And I got kicked. I got vote kicked, and I'm back in Germany now. And once again, from America to Germany, unfortunately, due to the involvement of the marriage, I didn't really get to take anything with me. So I ended up in Germany with almost nothing again. And now after a year being here, slowly but steadily, I'm, starting to build up a little bit, but with the intention of, I want to have some nice stuff, but I don't want to go full crazy again. And I'm already like, I already had like 2 points where I said, okay, this is the last thing I'm going to get. And then, I got another one. But it is still I'm very proud of myself. It's very, very minor. I don't have that much stuff here. So yeah. So that is the, why I was in America, basically for love. And yeah, so that's the story about America. And I think we will get back to another topic when we're talking about, hobby, how's the scene in America, and how does it compare to the European hobby and so on. So, but yeah.
Yeah, this makes you almost like the perfect guest for this podcast.
Yes,
So,
That's what I thought.
at least we got something out of the divorce.
Dude, I got so much out of it, but in the negatives.
Yeah. Okay, a lot of great topics that we're definitely gonna get in a little bit more. What I did wonder is you had like a few like hard resets almost then in the last years.
Reset, full reset.
Yeah, full reset. And you talked about, I know myself, I could get a little bit carried away with the collecting. And we wondered about, were there certain like key or learning moments that made you approach your care the way you are doing now? Or was it just something you noticed a long time, and if you got the chance to change it up, you took it?
Very good question. And I did think a little bit about it beforehand, but I always, as far as I can remember, I always enjoyed creating habitats. Obviously, as a child, they weren't as good because, you still have to learn a lot. And then also phasmids and such, you can't really build nice enclosures for them because they are boring as hell and they just eat plants, and you just have to go out and get your arms cut to get their food and so on. So, but I always enjoyed making it nice for the animals, as good as possible, like giving them as much fresh food as you can and so on, blah, blah, blah. But I think creating habitats and the terrariums, the style I'm doing them right now, that definitely came when I moved out of my parents' place and got my first terrarium with the begonias and then the dart frogs in, because the dart frogs actually really got me going into like researching and looking at their natural habitat, where do they come from. And like at that point, I've never been to the jungle really, and I absolutely love like on pictures how the jungle is looking, how it just everything, the biotope is just amazing. And with the first dart frogs, which were Dendrobates, Tinctorius, Azureus, the super blue ones, and until this day they might be one of the most common frogs, but they are, in my opinion, they are absolutely beautiful. Like, breeding them is so much fun. They have different patterns. They have great character. Like, you can actually become friends with those frogs. The first ones I got, I hand fed them and such. Like, they were so tame, incredible. And I think from there on, with the frogs and the chameleon, the big interest in creating habitats that not only look pleasing to me, but also give back to the animal. And I do think you had in your spreadsheet, you had the question if I think that, putting time and effort into your plants or the closure reflects back in the health of the animal. And I mean, yes, of course it does. It definitely does. It might the other way around, not like having frogs in a terrarium. They don't really benefit, like the plants don't really benefit from them. Like they just jump onto them, break them. They're chaos. But the frogs or the animals that you have in your enclosure, they definitely 100% profit from a good environment, a well-planned one. So yeah, and I think that's where it's coming from. I do have someone to mention who really gave a lot of knowledge and a lot of fascination to me. Not sure if he wants to be mentioned since we're not friends anymore, but I'm definitely greeting Pietro, who is the person who got me into begonias and also kind of frogs. And he back then, besides giving me a lot of very crazy species that you couldn't get, he also gave me a lot of input in how to grow and, just get this hobby going for me. And he did it in a very great way. He always just gave me little bites. Then in another plant that is a little bit more difficult with a few tips and so on and so on. So he was definitely a great mentor. And till this day, even though we are not friends anymore, I still owe a lot to him. And I'm very grateful that he taught me so many things, because he also builds terrariums in a very unique but beautiful way. Not only for the frogs, but also aesthetically. I think he's one of the people who has very much talent, very much skill, and is a little bit. He got silent. He's not showing that much anymore. Just like a lot of people that have been in the hobby for quite some time. It is kind of the same for me. I'm also I am stepping out of the scene a little bit. Just we can also get to that at some point. But yeah, definitely big shout out to Pietro if he hears that at some point. If you want to, be fine again, reach out to me. I'm very interested in meeting you again.
Strong move that you give him shout outs, and
I'm gonna send him the link myself.
Yeah, yeah, but
skip to minute
it speaks
20.
for you that you mention him in a good way, even though you're not
He
friends
is
anymore.
if you're a person with more than 2 brain cells, you definitely have to acknowledge certain things. And he is, I owe a lot to him, and it's sad that we're not friends anymore. But he definitely shaped me. He definitely shaped me in my hobby career.
Nice. Do you have some game changer advices without going into too far into stats and parameters? But do you have some advice that definitely changed your style of keeping or improved your style of keeping?
Well, in the beginning, I just started and just tried out a lot, which to everyone who's entering the hobby, don't go for don't copy people. You can definitely learn from everyone and try to, adapt certain skills. But I do think it is super important, just like with almost everything in life, you shouldn't just copy stuff. You should understand why. For example, if you set up a new plant box or terrarium and it absolutely goes down the drain and nothing is working, it's not because God hates you or because anything else. It's because you probably fucked something up. And by trying out a lot of things, you can, and if you then also, have the ambition to, document it also, you can rule out a lot of stuff and perfect your way of keeping plants. And I do have a little bit of an anecdote to that. When I came back from America, and again, this might be a little bit tooting in my own horn again, but I would say that with plants, at this point, I'm very experienced, especially with the super hard to keep plants. And I came back, and when I got this apartment, I started to do a little setup again so I can have some plants, and it did not go well. I was losing plant after plant. I was able to, the species that I brought with me from America, the few, my favorite ones, I were able to keep them alive, but I did not make them thrive. And I did my setup the way I've done it for years. Like it's the exact same setup, and it just frustrated the hell out of me until once again I remembered the way you keep your plants or whatever you keep, it is always bound to also your apartment and so on. This apartment I'm having right now, I've never had an apartment that has such good airflow. Like if I open my window, like behind the camera, there's already a good airflow. If I open my window in the kitchen, like there's actually a stream of air going through this apartment. So the way I countered, you cannot see it, but it's this black box behind me. The way I countered this after like half a year or so, it took me some time to realize that it is actually the airflow that is fucking me up. I basically got something to close off that closet, like a curtain. And since I'm doing that, I'm back on the road. Like give me whatever plant, I'm gonna propagate it for you and be successful with it. But that's one thing that a lot of people, especially people that are coming new into the hobby, that also often annoy me, they don't take that into account. It's not just, you just don't copy like some setup and then it's gonna work the same way. You have to like account for all the other stuff too, and try out, watch your stuff, look at it, put some time into observation, which I think is in this hobby, again, shout out to the reefer in the top right on my screen, looking at your corals, looking at, your animals. It is super important. If you see something that is not going well and you're not observe, like if you don't observe, at some point everything will be dead and you will be like, oh, how did that happen? But if you keep a keen eye on your stuff, you can often, before something really bad happens, also you can see it. Like with whatever animal, with whatever plant, there often is a lot of things to be done before something really bad happens. If you pick up the signals and put the time into, look at your stuff.
That's also something where it helps to don't have too much stuff, but rather focusing on something. I feel like, I feel like a lot of people that are getting into this hobby, we talked about this urge to collect, and you want to have everything, like this spider, that plant, more plants,
no spiders.
And that makes it more difficult to to maintain and monitor everything, have an eye on it. If you are experienced and know what to look after and you know your plans, it's easier to keep an eye on every parameter.
Absolutely with you. And I mean, I feel that right now a lot. Like it feels weird because I definitely have some kind of HDS or whatever. I always want to do something. I always, like, if I'm sitting still, I'm like, eh. And I think this is what the hobby also does for me. It does heal me in a certain way because I always have something to do. And I find it super pleasing to watch stuff grow and, success grow or whatever. And right now I have so little, like it feels too little. I'm always just sitting here looking into the terrariums and I'm like, oh, what can I do? What could I do? And in the end, it is not a bad thing though, because the stuff I do have is getting very, very, very much attention, if you want to say it like that, and that helps. I mean, it does help.
It's very cool that you also mentioned that you really got to take into account the environment you're in. Definitely.
In the insect hobby, I had conversations, and again, I don't want to offend anyone or so, but like, for example, there is in the mantis hobby, maybe you have heard about it, Toxodera. Toxodera? They're the holy grail since forever. They look like a dragon. Beautiful, beautiful genus. Absolutely crazy. They're like, they are set apart from everything else. They are one of a kind, kinda. And the hobby is trying to get those into cultivation since, I don't know, 15 years, 20 years, probably longer than I'm living. And it doesn't work. And throughout the last few years, we had great success in the hobby of people breeding them. And huge shout out to the people in Malaysia and so on that are actually doing the breeding and getting the breeding done right now. And besides them doing a crazy good job, again, I would never even, dare to ask their skill and whatever, like all the stuff they're doing. But, and now is the but, everything after the but is negated, everything before the but. They are in the hometown, in the home country of this animal. And that makes breeding obviously way easier. Like they have the humidity that animal has. They're going into their garden and finding them, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And it is often with a lot of animals that in certain countries or the way you're living, it makes it harder for them to really thrive. So, and a lot of people, I think, don't live for the animal. They have that animal or that plant at home, and it's part of their collection or something like that. But they would never go to a length of adapting their own life, or like, I don't know, like pushing the humidity in your room up to 80 so the plants are happy. But yeah, it is very, in my opinion, important to account for that. Where are you? What are you doing? Like, what are you breeding? What do you have in your inventory? So yeah.
We make it kind of difficult sometimes for ourselves by choosing all these very exotic animals, while there are probably a little bit closer to home so many beautiful animals to keep. That's way easier. You can keep outside, but we all want those exotic, like the picture of the jungle.
Yes.
Yeah.
We all want that, and I couldn't. I'm part of it. I wanted to, right? So there's nothing wrong about this, but I do think fair consideration has to be taken so that the animal and everything is happy too. It's not about just you, that you are happy. If you are getting animals, it is, in my opinion, a contract with that animal that you do your best to, give the best life to that animal possible. Yeah.
Well said.
Thanks.
Before we are going to get into the European fears there, American herpetoculture. Yeah. I do wonder. God. I talked about this with Till. The question we wanted to ask, like every plant person who was really into plants, was when somebody starts in the hobby and starts with a naturalistic setup or bioactive setup.
Yeah, thank you that you said bioactive. We would have gotten to that with the America part. Bioactive.
Yeah.
Mein Arsch.
And it's always the same plants.
Yes.
Epipremnum,
Yes, I know what. Okay.
Yes. Ficus benjamina. That's
it.
Okay. Maybe a bromeliad for your crested gecko.
Yeah. Excellent choice.
And we wondered, for those who are trying to step away from that, who try to improve on there, what would be your suggestion for like a good plant that's similar in care, maybe needs a bit more, but it steps away from the typical copying of those plants?
Okay, I get the idea. I get what the question is. Regarding that, I personally don't like. Yes, of course, there is plants. You can put plants on a difficulty scale, which I personally do myself too, because sometimes it is pretty handy to let someone know this plant is very finicky, this plant is very prone to dying fast, and so on. What I do think, though, that a lot of the plants, especially begonias, we can stay kind of in the begonia corner and go to the aroid corner too. It doesn't really matter because it's all the same in the end. Plants that are labeled as very hard to keep, they are not often, they are not hard because they are a very finicky species, but because the setup is wrong. And we're talking about Epipremnum or Rheum or so. Like this plant is, and again, it's not really a plant if we are honest. Like it's I don't know what it is, but it can. I personally use that plant too if I have insect boxes. If I want to make like a little plastic box with insects in it or so, it's one of the best plants to use because it is so easy. Like you can even have it kind of without substrate in that. It's just, you can put it in water, it always grows. You can't really kill it. But if you have a terrarium where you use the right substrate, you go for a drainage layer, you do the basic steps of building a bioactive terrarium, then you will have very little problems with many of the so labeled hard to keep plants. It's not about the plant, it's about the keeping often. Just with animals, the same. Like at some point on the Terroristica, there was someone talking with me about glass frogs and that they are not meant for the hobby. And I was like, bro, what the fuck are you talking about? They're not meant for the hobby. They have been bred by people that know what they're doing for years now. You don't even have to buy wild caught ones or so. Like, what do you mean? And he was like, yeah, mine are dying because of this and that and blah, blah, blah. And then I told him, like, show me your setup. What are you keeping them in? And we're not going to go into further detail about the keeping of his frogs and the tens of glass frogs he probably killed. But it is not about the animal often. It's about you, the keeper, who is basically putting them into a new world, into a new habitat. And it's the same with plants. They might not be animals, but they are kind of going for the same requirements. They want, with plants, I mean, with 80% of the people who are killing their plants and, their plants are not thriving, it's always the soil or the amount and the way they are watering. So that's in my opinion. I mean, again, when I did my sales in America and Europe, I had contact with so many people that were, highlighting exactly that problem, that, this died and that died, and it's too hard for me to keep the species, na. And if you give them like a good spreadsheet or like a good, like how you do your terrarium, how do you keep this plant happy, it almost always works, even with people that are new in the hobby. So it's about the setup and not about the plant, I would say. But if you want to keep a shitty setup and you want to keep your, keep having easy plants, then you definitely just go for epipremnum, because it doesn't cost anything and it will survive. Again, I have some laying on my windowsill. I cut it back out of an insect box and then I forgot it on my windowsill like a month ago, and it's starting to grow now, and I didn't even water it. Like this plant should be dead. It is not dead. So yeah, that would be my answer to what is like anthuriums. There's a shit ton of anthuriums that are very easy, very Anthurium brownie eye. There's so many species of anthuriums that could be Tilly looking nervously.
Where is mine?
It's dead.
For the listeners,
So
Finn gave me one when I visited him last time. He
How is it
cut
doing?
a Anthurium brownie eye out of the enclosure. And fun fact, it was in there, but it was
Yeah,
not
I
having
remember.
the misting system. So
Yeah.
it was producing new leaves, but the leaves
Okay.
looked a bit shitty. Now I took it off and it's just randomly standing on my
In the room?
yeah, and the new leaf
Okay.
is gonna look great. So
That is awesome, because I'm cutting out my Anthurium brownie eye out of the tank right now too, and I'm gonna adapt it to room temperature and
Nice.
humidity too, because
Should
it's
work
taking
great.
too much space. But yeah, like easy plants, anthuriums, there's a ton of philodendrons that are very easy to take
True.
care of. I mean, just start with verrucosum, melanochrysum, and again, super important, make a difference between house plants and terrarium plants. Keeping those tropical plants in your room is not easy. It is possible, but it makes those plants weaker and slower in growth and so on. Like there's so many benefits to keeping those plants in the actual humidity that they are used to. So that's also very important to, I think,
True.
mention, because, if you want to get good plants, cool plants that are not epipremnum, just make the right setup and everything will be okay. Everything will be okay.
I think especially Philodendron verrucosum and Melanochrysum look great in setups. They have like velvety dark leaves. The verrucosum even has nice red undersides depending on locality or form.
And the forms. You're saying it. Verrucosum, you can collect yourself to death. Like how many forms are there now? I don't even know anymore. I'm out of the verrucosum collecting game. But
I'm not even into it, and I have 3 different that look great. And love that. And you mentioned the setups. This is also something I talked about with Flo a lot. Because we always see different keepers reptile keepers that are not very much into plants, always buying like the same 4 or 5 species. And you see their Instagram stories, hey, I'm going to the construction market or the plant store again, and they buy Epipremnum, Sansevieria, and what else?
I know.
Spending a shit ton of money on them. These are cheap, but if you buy them every once in a while at a hardware store, they are pretty expensive.
Exactly. If you buy them from someone private, different story again. But from the hardware store, super expensive.
And they just put them in the pots they get them into their snake setups, and 3 months after do the same again. And for the listeners, the soil that you get at the construction market or most plants market is just meant to be cheap. So the plants won't
and
thrive
for
in
low
it.
humidity. Like it sucks up so much of the water, it gets super soggy. You need the right substrate. Again, it's the setup. Like if you give the plants the right setup, the right soil and so on, depending, like I have the two terrariums next to me, they're heavy raining, like in the morning, evening, and in the night. And even the, like, for example, those egg-shaped zonorillas I started to focus on right now, they are very known for being, well, you can't make them happy, basically. Like almost no one in the hobby is succeeding with making them happy. I think there's like 3 people also in Europe that really like get them going. But for example, one thing that all of the other keepers of the egg-shaped zonorillas that I've talked with don't do is spray them. They're like, oh, if I spray my egg-shaped zonorillas, they will melt, they will die overnight. Mine are getting waterboarded. Like I'm just letting them, they get waterboarded daily 3 times. And the reason why it works for me is because the setup works. I have enough ventilation in between, like from I think like 2 until like 8 in the evening, they dry off very well. I use soil that has a lot of air pockets in the soil itself, so the roots always have enough air and can't really rot that fast. I have drainage in the bottom, so excess water is always coming out of the soil and dripping into that, so you don't have like mud in the ground. And again, that's basically the same for all the plants. If you do the setup right and if you adapt them, that is also another thing. You can, just as you can have terrarium plants outside of your terrarium in your room, you can have plants that absolutely tolerate no water normally, no spraying, and you can make them tolerate water. My next project is gonna be just a few begonia dart valerianas in that super rainy tank, just to piss off people, because it's super easy to keep them alive if you know how it works. But for the people coming into the hobby and just trying out stuff or keeping them in boxes and so, it's a little bit harder.
Yeah.
Because of the setup.
Do you remember for the Las Botanica where we went? I asked some shops if they would bring begonia dart valeriana, and they told me, no, you can't transport them, they will melt.
It's such a bullshit. Dude, I had a fucking begonia dart valeriana on my way from Germany to America with me in my pockets, basically. So, and it survived, it was fine. You just have to do it right. And the plant, again, has to be adapted to certain parameters. Since COVID came around, the hobby got so inflated and is full with people that, again, it's totally fine. But when I got into the hobby, all the old people, like, they don't want you in the hobby because they don't like new people in the hobby. That was with the begonia hobby, especially, like the begonia scene. A lot of old people, crazy good growers. You guys have no idea. Like all the people that are growing right now, we are all growing good. But those people, you know, some of them are 60, 70, 80, and they have been growing for ages and they're doing it so well. Like, incredible. But when I got into that scene, they definitely didn't like me for multiple reasons, because at some point I started selling plants, and, you know, normally that was never a thing before, that you sell a rare begonia for $100 or something. But they always were against new people in the hobby. And when I had started at some point to like get that, I found it a little bit, I never liked that. I always made fun of them, of being stiff, and, you know, they don't want new people in the hobby, which is super important for the hobby to stay alive. If there's no new people coming, this is going to end at some point. But I can partly understand them, why they're so against new people in the hobby, because I started to really feel that during COVID. Like, obviously it was awesome that so many people rushed into this hobby, and it also gave monetary value to a lot of the plants. Like, prices went crazy, people bought like 8 at some point. Like, for example, I just photographed a whole box of plants that I had, and people would just buy the whole box, like with all the stuff in it. Was pretty cool, but it doesn't really give the hobby any positive, good extra vibes or so, because all of those people flooding in are coming in for money because of the hype and so on. They're not really there because they love plants. They do love plants. I don't want to, you know, say that they don't, but there's different motivations in the hobby.
Do you think that, like, the people who have been doing this for a long time and you see a lot of people coming in, do you think that they are like, they are just don't want that, like they are against it, or are they just really protective of what they're doing?
Good question. I would say both. And everyone who knows me knows that I love plants. And when I have something new, for the first people to buy it off me, if I'm exclusively someone who has it, it will be more expensive, but my prices will go down, since I will, you know, definitely keep that plant in cultivation and cycle it and so on. So I think it is a mixture out of anything. The old people in the hobby didn't like the way that how monetized it got. And I mean, what can I say? If I would be 60, 70, you know, like sitting on my smartphone shaking, like you, Till, and, you know, not really knowing what the fuck is going on. And then there's a person coming around, like getting plants from, I also, from all the old people, that is important to say, from the old people from the hobby, I, in the beginning, got a lot of plants from them too, because they're crazy good species and they were growing amazing. So I got a lot of stuff from them, and that in the end, at some point, a year later, or I don't know when, would also, you know, be sold by me or so. And they didn't like that, which I can understand, because this old cycle of plant keepers, it's a little bit like a cult. Not like a cult, but, you know, you get the idea what I want to say. They're like a community, they trade with each other. If they have something, they give it to the other person, no monetary values involved. And it's just for the sheer fun of growing and trading, which is absolutely amazing. I love that. I love that. So I can't really blame them for being a little bit mad at me for ruining their little cold circle with, oh, I only have this plant and you don't have it, and you can't get it because I don't sell it. Again, a lot of people in the hobby that definitely do that, and that's fine. But I generally am for spreading those species in the cultivation, because you can, best example, I think the easiest to see how much the hobby actually has impact on, let's say, our environment, is if you take a few of the rarer frog species or so that have to be, you know, that get rewilded and so on, and then generally get bred by people in Europe, and, you know, like DGHT.
Yes.
It's a great thing, and I absolutely support the, you know, cultivation of any species. And I think that this, you know, cycle of keeping them in the hobby makes, you know, it doesn't make them invincible, but it definitely, you know, saves those animals from dying out in nature. Artilopus is a great example too. So yeah.
Gatekeeping won't help with conservation. Yeah, true.
Yeah.
I think, Stefan, maybe you made some experience like that with the Lanthanotus, because I can imagine that a lot of people have some interest in them, but don't want to do their own research. And yeah, I feel like with these very interesting but more difficult species, you can have some interesting conversations with people online.
Of course, definitely.
Yeah, honestly, sometimes I do get questions that could be answered if somebody was really interested and searching for info. Like the question, where can I get them? But I read it, but I just don't answer it. So I don't have those conversations, because then I'm like, okay, if you say in the same sentence, oh, I'm super interested in these, I love them, where can I get them?
Where can I buy?
And then I'm like, if you are really interested in them, if you really are into them, then you've done your research, and then you will find out they're not that easy to locate. You're looking at the video of a person breeding them.
No, I mean, exactly. I mean, I know exactly what you mean. I'm super interested, but I don't want to do any research. That always pisses me off. Then you're not really interested. Like, if I'm really, obviously, again, like, the community has to be a safe place, and you can ask anyone who has more knowledge than you. And I'm like, again, I'm always up for helping. I'm super happy if there's new people coming into the hobby that are interested in all the stuff that the hobby is doing, and plants and animals and so on. But I do find this lack of self-motivated research and so on it's very pregnant. It's very easy to see that this is a common illness of today, kind of like, you know, with TikTok and so on. People can't sit still for like over a minute and listen to you. They always want, you know, like fast, like, it just make it as easy as it is possible, right? Like, again, I'm still waiting for Artilopus varius. This is like my dream species to ever have. They will probably never get into cultivation because there's so many CITES and paper stuff protecting them. But like, I'm up for waiting 10, 20 years until I have those. I don't give a fuck. If they come into cultivation, I will be sure to throw my money at the person who's breeding them. But again, this, like, patience. Just wait. Just wait. With so many things that you see, don't buy those fucking wild caught animals. Like, I don't understand that there's still a market for wild-caught animals, like especially considering the fact that most of those wild-caught animals are in breeding. Like you can buy captive bred ones. Why is there still a market for this? And this is also something that I don't know. This is something I assume, but I assume that a lot of new people in the hobby buy wild-caught because it's very cheap in comparison to the captive bred ones, and more wildly available because those people that wild import, they have often a website that you can easily find and so on. It's not like with private breeders. The dude I'm getting my glass frogs from, I think you wouldn't find him, but I have been buying from him for years, and his animal quality is like immaculate. Like his keeping, his breeding, his frogs, everything is perfect. But you would never ever find him on the internet if I wouldn't give you his name or his phone number. Like,
I think that's those people, you just gotta put a little bit more effort in. I do think that the new people are more inclined to buy wild caught because they simply don't consider they are wild caught. A lot of them have no idea that so much is still caught in the wild. But I do, if I look at like your typical reptile or pet store now in comparison to 5 or 10 years ago, and I actually did an internship at a reptile importer, so I knew what was being spread around. But if I look now, more and more is captive bred, luckily. And you see, and you see more people start with the species that most info is from. So I think there is some nuance there. But I agree with you that wild caught either ends up in the hands of people who walk on a reptile show and have 10, 20 euros left, or hopefully the people who actually will put some effort in them.
And that is something different, though. If you are very, very experienced keeper and you're getting a group of certain frogs that are wild caught so you can breed them, that's a totally different thing, in my opinion. It is still wild caught and you shouldn't support it. But if you are a pro and you basically bring those animals into captivity after, buying a group of wild caught ones, it's a very different topic. It's more about this, I'm buying this animal because I want it and blah, blah, blah. And, I don't really get behind the whole, what is wild caught? What does that actually mean? And so on, because it's a bad time for everyone buying wild caught animals. So
sometimes I do understand it though, because I
understand it
the
too,
Gonocephalus doriae.
I don't know what that is.
Okay, that's a lizard. That's maybe Till know what it is. Gonocephalus doriae. That's at the moment Asian agamids are very popular, and a captive bred of them is like 1,500 euros. And if you would buy a wild caught animal, then it can be less than 100. So there's almost 1,000 euro difference.
I understand it too. It's just I don't like it, and I never bought anything wild caught. I never did it, so I have a clean jacket, and I can just basically say something against everyone who does. But no, I had so many moments where I was like, okay, this glass frog costs $50. If I buy it from my reputable breeder, it's like $300. But because of the health of the animal, I know where they're coming from. You won't introduce any weird diseases from, there's so many things that can go wrong with wild caught ones. I just never really wanted to get into it, but I can understand where it is coming from. And I don't condemn anyone who is doing it. I just highly suggest to not do it, and suggest the spread of information, why it's bad. And again, like I said, with children, teach them early and they will turn out okay.
Maybe Till, should we get into we just discussed a lot of great topics. So really fun until now. So the reason we also started this podcast is because when we were on American podcast, we always got asked about European herpetoculture as if it was like an obvious separate thing. And we do believe there are some differences, but as somebody who has experienced the American hobby quite up close, and also the European hobby, because you were born here and you're back here again. How would you describe the difference between American and European herpetoculture, or what defines like European herpetoculture?
No, that's a very good question. Yeah, that's a very good question. So I think, first of all, you have to say that the American and the European culture both has, a lot of people in the hobby that are not doing a good job. That is very important to say. I don't think that this changes no matter where you're going. There's always the people that are doing it very well, and then there's, the other people. But for example, in America, we've talked about that, like 20 minutes ago. They have a little bit of a different standard of what you would expect. So and then again, this also is very, connected to what kind of animal or kind of plants people are keeping. Let's stay with animals though, because that makes more sense. Plants doesn't really matter here right now. But if I hear someone has dart frogs, I instantly in my head, there's like a terrarium with, tropical plants and like a nice habitat for them. And I do think that in Europe, we have a little bit more of this going, that there's a standard for certain things that we just know and accept, and that's how it is. And with America, there's a bigger gap in between what you expect and what actually is and what people do. But besides that, in America, there's also some people that are doing a fantastic job at breeding, at creating habitats, and just absolutely amazing. Like and maybe you get him onto the podcast too, Nick Stacy. If you want to have someone on the podcast who knows about, frogs, and pretty much he is doing a zoo right now. He is like building up his own zoo, and from everything I can see, this is basically what you would want from a zoo. He is doing it. He loves his animals. It's his work. Like his whole life is evolving around this zoo. And then again, like he is the guy who is breeding Artolopus barbotinii super well. He is breeding so many things so well. His enclosures look good. He is a prime example of what the American hobby should look like. But again, we are cycling back to the not so nice side, this dumb bioactive thing. So America and bioactive, like for them, that's something totally new. It's kind of like when I was in America, they asked me if I, in Germany, have microwaves. So, and in America, you go to them and you can ask them if they have a bioactive tank, something like that. Because for them, bioactive is something new and is not the norm, not the standard. If you would ask me, how do you keep frogs? I would always say, and I hate to use this term, but I will use it for now. You always need a bioactive terrarium. Like you can keep frogs in a plastic bin and just throw them food in there. Of course, this works, but it is not good for the animal. It doesn't look aesthetic. And also, again, like who would want to keep like that? And I do understand that if you reach a certain breeding size, like if you, for example, breed insects, mantids, which I've done too, your setups need to be efficient as possible. You don't want to give too much space. You don't want the animals to give too much space to, kill themselves. With insects, that's more common than with anything else, that they mismold or something like that. You want to give them very clean, very easy setups. But again, when the standard for me would be, no matter what setup, I always have soil in it, I have springtails in it, I have plants in it, I have like a little, biotope going. In America, you still see a lot of the clean keeping, if you want to say that, very sterile, like frogs in a huge IKEA box with some sticks in it, paper towel at the bottom. And again, there is situations when those setups are very, very effective and also, needed if you want to quarantine your animals, if you're moving, whatever, like there's reasons for it. But in America, I feel like this standard keeping of having an animal in a plastic cup with nothing in it is way more normal than it is in Europe. So they have, I don't really want to like remind myself, but I went to like 2 or 3 expos in America and they were horrible. Like, again, I already don't like going to Hum if there's like the Terroristica there, because so many people and the animals are so fucking stressed. Have you, like, if you, next time, if you're at the Terroristica, go to the chameleons. They're a prime example. Like, probably most of them will die after that, or at least have like permanent damage from all the stress. Like they're in small boxes, they can see so well. Chameleons can see like what, 1.5 kilometers or something. Like this is death for any animal. And in America, it was even worse. Even smaller containers, even more stacked. The people there, like, I don't know. So I think that in Europe, the baseline of what we expect okay keeping is a little bit higher than in America. But again, in America, there's, in my opinion, some of the best breeders we have, the really, really dedicated ones. And again, I mentioned him before. Nick Stacy is a prime example of that. So again, you can't partialize it.
Yeah.
We're gonna
Maybe.
try this one. You can't just say the American hobby is worse than the European. Also, it both has, you know, pros and cons. But I do think in Europe, since again, we can also just bring that into the debate, the hobby is older here than in America. Like we have more, it has been in our culture, if you want to say it like that, a little bit longer than in America. And I do think I've only been like 2 years in America or so, but I do think this whole bioactive thing is making a big turn in their keeping right now, mainly because so many people also got into plants. Like the plant craze in America, normally everything that happens in America happens in Europe 5 years later. We had our plant craze in Europe before America had it. There's still a lot of species that are very common here. You can't get them in America and so on. So when I was there in America during COVID, the plant craze also really started to pick up there. And I do think it really like interacts with the way people keep their animals, like the baseline of how they keep them. That's what I can definitely say about the American hobby. And they spend more money on plants. I don't know. I mean, the prices in America are a little bit odd. Obviously, you earn more in America and it's a different currency. But the Americans, they go ham. Like they have this collector's heart. Like if you have something that they really want and so on, that's something they're very passionate about it. Like they are very passionate about a lot of things. For example, growing weed. In America, everywhere where marijuana is legal, they go nuts, like with breeding crazy strains and so on. They put a lot of time and dedication into their work. But then again, that's the top 10 part of the hobby. The other 90, I don't know. Like they are, but it's the same in Europe too, I would say.
One of my theories was that, to me, as somebody who sees it only via what is shown to me, so the marketing of the American herpetoculture, it seems to me a little bit more that that ours often starts with a fascination and a hobby, and I don't want to say that's not the case there, but it often very quickly shifts to something that can be made into a business. And maybe that has also effect on the effective, more efficient way of keeping. As soon as you want to increase your margins, you want to have less cost, and you want to work as efficient as possible to make sure everything stays clean and breeds, and you can produce higher numbers. But that also means that indeed sometimes people are more willing to invest more money in there because it's seen more as an investment than as only a pet or a hobby.
Yeah,
I don't know if that's the case, but that's something
that I couldn't say either. I do think that your logic is true. Like Americans often think when it comes to that a little bit more financially about the whole situation, what they're doing, which in my opinion is absolutely, that's good. You should always have your finances in keep. But I do think it is kind of the same for Europe when it comes to the fascination and this making money with an animal. I will not drop any names, but I do know a handful of young people, like throughout my last, I think, 6-7 years in the hobby. I've met a lot of young people, mostly boys. It's always boys, young boys, that, get into this whole hobby very, very fast, often too. And then, once they kind of get into it, they often also, like, again, now I'm starting to kind of drop a little bit names, but they always have some kind of breeder in their name or so, but, they're not, like, they are breeding stuff or so, but not like commercially on a big scale. And a lot of those people that then, start to commercialize those animals, some of them then go to this, mass import thing and, go to like kind of what you were talking about, animal imports and so on. And I can't really say that for America. I've only been there 2 years and I haven't been interacting with people that were much younger than me. But in Germany, I can definitely tell you that there's a lot of young people coming into the hobby, and I don't want to say that they're like not having passion for it or so, but they are commercializing it very fast, and most of them they stop breeding themselves too. They're basically being a middleman in the end for importing animals from Thailand, from wherever, and then sell them here on the market. And again, that is, in my opinion, someone kind of has to do it. Like, but then again, I personally am the opinion that we should all, not all, but like private breeding is the best you can get from quality wise for the animals. You know, like the attention and love you put into your own projects, no zoo or no like import breeder can give that, you know, like, and in my opinion, it does have a very big influence on the animal. Like, for example, the glass frogs I'm having right now, those I sold for very little money to a friend of mine before I went to America, and I got them back now. They're still alive, they're still doing well. Like the the blue big lady, the Coronella granulosa lady, she's 7 now or so, like looks absolutely fantastic. And I still hope she goes for like, what, 13 years or so, if everything goes well. But, you know, that is because also, I personally think so, because, you know, the guy I got them from, he bred well, gave them good vitamins. He has a perfect environment for them with UV and so on. And he loves what he's doing. You can tell, like he is a nerd too. He loves his frogs. So I think that is very important. And young people getting into the hobby and commercializing it, go for it, do it, but don't do that shady, disgusting, I import animals from Thailand and then resell them here to bigger sellers. I find that super disgusting. I have to say it like that. Breed them your own, up in your skills, be an enrichment for the hobby and the environment. Don't do this huge import thing. We have seen that with plants en masse. Like when the plant craze hit and Indonesia and so on kind of like made their papers easier for the phytos and so on, people went nuts. They went for like orders of 50,000 euro to buy 50,000 melanochrysums to then instantly flip and resell them here. And the same is happening with animals. And that is something I absolutely condemn. I hate this trade. And, you know, it doesn't do anyone any good. It doesn't do any good to the local market. It doesn't help us here because the plant quality or animal quality sucks. And the only person who's really profiting from it is the people that are there and exporting the animals, which I personally think we can't attack because we're the first world. We are rich as fuck. We have everything we want. You can't really condemn people in another country that, you know, they earn what, €1.20 a day for like hard work. I would do the same. I would export animals and plants too if I would be them. But you can definitely slap the people on the wrist that are buying those animals in the first country or plants. And I really would love that generally the hobby is going to more of a private breeding and more of a, you know, you focus on what you love, you do what you love, and, you know, if it works well, then you can commercialize it. But this kind of commercializing a trade that is already shady, I don't like it.
Do you feel like other way around? You talked about the problems you had with the elder people in the hobby when you were starting to commercialize things. Do you think they had similar prejudice with you, or
well, I mean, maybe,
other problems? Maybe,
but again, I can, and I still have until today, I have a very wide, clean slate west for that. I've never imported plants and resold them here. I've never done that. I've never done any big mass imports to then profit from them. The only thing I have done, we have talked about that before, I've gotten myself plants or species generally that are not available in the trade, and then, you know, breed them for half a year, and then make them available for everyone else. That's what I've definitely done. But, you know, this mass importing and then just reselling, I've never done that. I find that personally very, not my thing. I wouldn't want to get my hands dirty with that.
Yeah. Okay, coming back to the differences in the cultures, do you think, like, if you would have started your first commercial stores or whatever in the USA and not in Germany or Europe, do you think people would have approached you in a different way than the Germans did? Maybe, right? Because
very much could be.
I feel like it's more common to make money out of the hobby in the USA, right?
Yeah. No, it is true, and I also have a story for that. So when I before I went to America and I had my first plant shop here, and started to gain a little bit more attraction and traffic. I back then talked with my girlfriend, the one that lived in America, and she had a lot of cool begonia species that she would not sell though. She never sold. And I was very confused about that. But I can drop the name of the begonia metallicolor, which is one of the most sought after, or was at least, one of the most sought after begonias and generally plants. Super finicky plant, very difficult to keep happy. So you would get one now and then. I think in Europe they would go for something from 50 to 120 euros, somewhere around that, depending on the plant and so on. But they almost no one would ever, make them really thrive or breed them or whatever. And my girlfriend back then in America had this plant, multiple of them, like a box full. And I was like, oh, that's nice. That looks like that looks like you have, I don't know what I said, something like you don't have to work this month or some bullshit like that. And then she was like, no, I'm not selling those. I got them for free. And I was like, what the fuck? You got them for free? A full box of metallicolor? And then she was like, no, not for free, but for like $10 or something. And so the story behind this, kind of like the similar with me, do you guys know the Begonia Society, the American Begonia Society? Isn't really important for you. It is kind of important if you're in the begonia game. I haven't dropped that yet. I have to flex again. I was the first one who managed to do and register a hybrid in the Peter Mania section. And I have, until today, I think I have like 5 registered cultivars / hybrids. And the American Begonia Society is basically the American Begonia Society is basically the data entry bank for everything. So if you do a hybrid or so, you have to get the papers done and send it to them, and then they basically give you a registration and so on, blah blah blah. But they do annual or like monthly meetings or so, and it is kind of the same as with Europe. They have a lot of very old people, like 70, 80 years old, growing since forever. And then they do a fundraiser at the end where they basically auction off plants, and they are auctioning off everything from disgusting Rex begonias to Begonia metallicolor. And they all go for the same price. They always go for like $1 or $2 or something. And you can imagine that I've been to a convention like that, and I've just, we got a lot of nice plants out of it. But in America, before that huge plant craze and so on, selling those plants wasn't a thing either. They were traded like, it's a rare plant, and I give you this one, you give me that one. And so, for example, my ex never sold plants, and that changed when I came over. But when I started selling, they also started, kind of a little bit, I think I was a year late or so, but people in the US started to sell plants too and trade them. So I'm not sure if it would have had any, I think it would have gone the same kind of, because again, the trend does copy onto different countries and continents. So I think it wouldn't make a really big difference. In the end, we are all humans, we are all the same kind of, and the American hobby, just like our European hobby, they have a lot of old people that have been doing this for forever. So, yeah.
Yeah, one day we will be the old people, so let's start a plant cult.
We already
That's
are.
what I'm taking away from this episode.
My attitude is already that. I'm already old.
Perfect. I can learn a lot from that.
Yeah. Less shaky.
Yeah. Yeah, I already got the shaky syndromes of an old person. You already got the divorce, so I think we could have a good team to start.
Make a good addition to the team, definitely. Yeah.
Stefan, what is going on in your mind?
I was just thinking, was waiting on you and wanted to give you space to ask your question.
Okay.
I think we did that very well.
Yeah, I think so too.
But very, very interesting to hear your observations on that front, because you've, although it was only for 2 years, have seen the both sides.
A little bit.
And it almost sounds like you say it's not that different as people think it is.
No.
Why do you think this idea exists? that there's
it is different. The hobby is different, but in the end, it amounts to the same outcome. But again, stuff like that, bioactive is a thing. Well, is something crazy. Then they use different products. Often UVB lighting in America, for example, hasn't really like gotten there. Some people use UVB, but they don't swear on it. Like it's not in the European hobby. If you ask anyone with frogs, they will all tell you go for UVB. UVB is absolutely fantastic for a bunch of reasons. We could, make a list that is, I don't know how long. And that is also something different in America. So despite the fact that it is somewhat the same, I might have to add that the reason why I think it is kind of the same is because, I went over there already established in the hobby, and I kind of just had to find the products that I wanted or try out new products and to get to the same outcome as before. But it is somewhat different also from the availability of animals and plants. Like it is a bit different, but the outcome is the same. It is in the end just a different country with a little bit different culture. And I do think that there's a lot of similarities in the hobbies.
Nice.
Yeah.
It almost sounds like you see the same nuances or differences between European and American as you will see between snake keepers, frog keepers, aquarium keepers.
Yeah,
those are almost like niches within.
Yeah. In the same hobby, but different niche. Yeah. Kind of like that. I would describe it like that. I think that's a good description of, the comparison of those, two continent hobby communities.
Maybe it also depends on, not just which niche, but also which bubble. If you came over to the USA, you already had your standard, your vibe, you were connected on the internet. So maybe the people you connected with over there had a different standard. So if you would have started your hobby there, you could have gone in a completely different direction overseas than if you just already brought in your ethics and your stuff.
Absolutely. So, my answer to the question is obviously very subjective, just like almost everything in life. But I do think that is a very fair point. If I would have started there, it would have gone different. And I mean, if I would have stayed there, it would have gone different too, because with the plants, it was going pretty well, even though I only had just a small setup in, my apartment and in the basement. If I would have stayed longer, I probably would have gone for a big greenhouse or something like that, because it definitely was a very good market over there, especially once you really get your foot in. Like when we started doing the business there, we started from nothing, kind of just like on Etsy, 0 reviews, nothing, and then the ball got rolling. So I think this is hard to say. You probably can still have the same market going here if you go for whole Europe and not just for Germany or something like that. But that is something that is very different from, Europe. The feeling of America itself is a little bit hard to describe that, but it acts more as one country that is just enormous. And it's weird you all know how big America is. And we all know this stereotype of America is one land, kind of, but you can kind of feel it. And it is, for example, when you ship plants and so on, it is very interesting to see, because people were buying plants from all over America, and the distribution system within America is actually pretty okay. Like in comparison to what we have here with our most liked and very, very much liked DHL, they have a very, for USA, working system. Everything, as soon as you move out of the USA, shit goes down. You have no idea. Like when I moved back from America to Germany and had to ship my few things that didn't got thrown away and kicked out, it is so expensive. America is very, 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 very interested in keeping the trade of American products and everything in America. Everything that goes out or comes in is very much penalized with, shipping costs and so on. So, and you can feel that Americans really love buying American. So if you have an American plant store, they love buying from the American plant store, which makes sense, but it is different, at least for Germany. Like we don't have that kind of patriotism that America has. And this kind of patriotism doesn't get supported by the state itself. Like America is really interested in keeping America running, which I personally think is an absolute fantastic thing. That's how it should be. You should keep your country going. After your country is fine, you go and help others, something like that. And they really play like that. Like they are America first. You guys know it. You know how America portraits themselves and how they are. But this is not a negative thing, in my opinion. And you can definitely feel it. I think that is also one of the only reasons why I even was able to establish the plant business there again, because I don't know if I would have. That's hard to answer though. But in America it worked very well, partly because Americans are very happy to buy from inland stores and so on.
It's interesting how you can see it in the hobby too. I'm just thinking about the distances you might have shipped your plants. If somebody
It's crazy,
from if somebody from France would sorry.
Nee, sorry, ich wollte dich eigentlich nicht. Mach du zuerst.
Thank you. If somebody from France or something would text me on Instagram, hey, can you sell a plant to me and send it to me? I'd probably just say, no, I'm not sending there because it's too far away. Or maybe it's too much of a hassle to send there. I don't know if it is, but I feel like this is something different overseas.
No, this is exactly what I meant. Like while I was in America, once I settled a little bit, this shipping, like wherever you're shipping to Florida, Illinois, what do I know? It never felt like I'm like when I was in Europe or in Germany, when I shipped from Germany to Poland or France, or say. In America, it really feels like you're shipping in the country. It's you already said it very well. It is a very different feeling to it because it's one land. Like they're all American. They're not like, oh, I'm from Chicago. They're all gonna tell you they are American, and that's how it also feels like to have business there and ship there and so on, which is pretty cool. I do like that part.
Actually, this is very interesting because that's something I do sometimes miss in European. Is that shipping animals here pretty much doesn't happen. Maybe with some insects, and there's some businesses who sell you a coral or a fish, but there are huge businesses who revolve around shipping and sending animals. I see so many unboxing videos of people like, oh, I bought a new snake, and they get this box.
Or chameleons or parrots or so when they have them in like this. Everything. They ship everything.
That's something
ship everything.
We don't have that.
Well, we do have certain, shippers that are focused on animals, but I would absolutely agree it is not the same. It is not the same as in America where they ship everything. It's, well, again, like you can talk about, like we can argue about it because in the end, if you want that snake, the snake is in Florida and you're in New York, like what is the best way to get it in one day over is through a carrier like that. But again, having a snake in like a potato sack, and it always is a little bit odd, but you're right. Like when the shipping and the interconnection in America is based on a very different idea than what we have here. And again, this collective, if I would ask you what nationality are you, you would never say I'm European. Like, fuck, I'm not European, I'm German, or wherever you're from. We don't have that collective thinking, that collective being together as one. That is very strong in America and very weak here.
Fairly.
Very interesting points.
It is. I'm very grateful that in the end, I'm not grateful for my divorce, but I'm grateful that I had the chance to live in America for that time, and it is culturally very different. I'm very happy to be here in my home country again. Very, very happy about that. But it definitely is. It was a great experience overall. If you cut out the last 3 months of it.
Okay. Do you have something you missed most about European or German herpetology?
The language.
Where you are? Okay.
Honestly, the language. I love, as you can hear, I love babbling. I can talk all day. I'm having fun. Especially with English. I do think that English is an absolute amazing language because it is okay, now English speakers will kill me, but it is an easy to learn language. It is obviously not as easy to master in the end, but due to the fact that it is on the difficulty scale, it isn't on cranked up to 10. It lacks certain aspects that I really, really enjoy about German. Like German is so versatile. It is very funny. It is super direct. You can be so specific with German. And obviously you can all do that with English too, but it doesn't feel the same as it feels with the mother tongue. And I think the most I missed in America, well, nothing I really missed about the hobby, because I had pretty much all the stuff that I wanted. I got the frogs that I always wanted, the Atelopus. Mainly I was just missing, home, the friends, the language, my country. So, but hobby-wise, I would have been fine in America, I think. And again, they are so close to South America. They got all the good shit in the butterfly conservatory. I think I didn't mention that. During my whole stay in America, I was interning in a butterfly conservatory.
Cool.
With mainly the focus on breeding rare or special species. Super cool place, awesome people. Fred, who is the guy who basically led the whole thing, amazing guy. And they have permits. In America, that is maybe one thing, that I can actually add. That is interesting because some people might not know that. In America, you need, for a lot of stuff that is very silly, you need permits. Kind of like what we as in Germany always say, we have so much paperwork in Germany, and we do, but it's not, whatever. But in America, for every fucking butterfly they had there that was on a certain list, they need like a permit for that. And they have like very strict regulations of how much they can breed and blah, blah, blah. Like very interesting to see. But in combination with that, they, for example, had permits for importing butterflies from South America. And with that, obviously, also comes the chance of importing other things from South America, which unfortunately we have never done because he didn't get. I always wanted Corydodes rhombicollis. We can already slide Corydodes into this podcast. But that is something very, very important to know in America. And again, then there's for corals, for example, I was on my coral craze, and I would basically sit down every Sunday on my porch, smoke a joint, and then go on eBay and bid on corals, because that's something you can't do here in Europe. I think still corals are animals, so they are banned from eBay. And again, America handles that in a little bit of a different way. So you can buy corals for sure with insects. I have seen insects on eBay, but I think they get taken down then. But corals and so on are fully fine. Okay, again, everything that is aquatic is a different topic. But I can definitely tell you, if you have never done eBay auctions on corals, I fucking miss that. That is so amazing. You just sit there, you smoke, and you just go last minute in, and then you get a crazy designer coral for just so little. And I don't know. I hope I hope eBay will bring that to Europe. If that happens, I instantly have a saltwater tank again.
Good reason to get one. But that's so. It sounds really different to us, because I talked about this with the boys. Is that they often send me Amazon links of what is available. And we don't even have that in the Netherlands.
Amazon for just goods,
just
or for
products
animals?
or goods.
Okay, yeah.
So specific. It's so divided. Well, it's one Europe, but it's also so divided still. Really interesting to hear.
Mm-hmm.
So Phil, I don't know about you, but I think it's smart to go to our last question.
Yeah, time is flying. I feel like there are so many topics we could talk for hours
really
about. That's what a podcast is about. But
yeah.
Sure.
And who's doing the cutting work? Who has to cut all of this?
Stefan, he volunteered. He volunteered.
He volunteered. Passed. He doesn't want to volunteer anymore.
Yeah. No. Fuck it. No. I actually bought a new computer to
nice.
speed up the editing work. So I'm very curious. That's also the reason we had some issues now, because I was installing it, but somehow I couldn't get it connected to the Wi-Fi. So I needed to switch back to my old one. So everything is a bit.
Nice.
Yeah. Our last question for you would then be, as we are going to ask most of our guests, is you had some very explicit ideas on how you think this hobby should look like, or what you would like to promote. If it was up to you, how would the future of this hobby, what will it look like?
That's a good
you
question.
Hope to see more? Maybe
that
that's
is a really good question. It is, all the questions are pretty good. All the questions you're asking are all very nice questions, but a little bit harder to answer in the end, because in the end, I personally just, for myself, want to continue my plant and terrarium grind. I want to obviously get better where I can get better. And I do generally think we are moving into a good direction. As you said, there's more private people, or generally people breeding animals. We have a lot of people in the plant hobby now. And even though there's still a lot of imports going on, we kind of are saturated in a way of, what species are available. We don't have it like, we don't have the problem. Wait 1 second. Can someone say something real quick?
Sure.
Test.
Perfect. Just needed to check out which headphone died again. I think people should, care for their animals. They should definitely keep an eye on that, especially when it comes to those times where you feel like you're getting into this, you want more craze thing, you want more animals, you want more plants and so on, which is totally fine. Just always keep an eye that your quality is in check. And I don't know, like what else would I wish for? What would I like to see? I would like to see more cool terrarium builds, to be fully honest, like more scapes, kind of like the aquarium hobby has going, where you have like full competitions of who's building the more beautiful habitat. And I do know that especially a lot of private people that are not on the internet, that don't really show what they're doing, but there's a lot of people in Europe that have great setups that they just don't share, because either they don't care or they're, from the older generation. But I think I generally would love to see more of that, more cool terrarium builds that, inhabit beautiful species. Maybe you can even breed them in that exact habitat or so. But I really would love to see more cool builds. That is something that I definitely wish for.
Cool.
And it is very nice. Good. This one is gonna be so long to edit.
Just honestly leave a lot of the stuff in. Like
I will.
I would say it's funny. It's more personal, and that's what you guys are aiming for, to make a like coffee clutch runde here. So I think you can also keep a lot of those gulps and other stuff.
I don't know. Stefan has to get some work. I feel like he's getting bored if he doesn't have to edit all this stuff for us.
And his saltwater tank is going offline too, so we are hitting the night now.
Yeah, we are. Can you see?
Yeah, I do see. Do we have your like? No, it's not an ink bird, but I do like. I fucking love saltwater. Sums, the filter systems, all the technology involved. I love it.
But this one is very simple, Finn. I don't have any SPS in there because
no, I saw. But
my goal was to have the mangroves.
Yeah.
And eventually this light will also go, because I really like the panel. I like the spread, but my goal is to have the mangroves just be like over there.
And so you want to do the mangroves on the corals with the same light, or will you have it stay like, because I always the same light?
Yeah, and I think it's possible, because also thanks to Finn, and that's because thanks to Till, and that is because I've looked at a lot of videos of mangrove reefs. And looked at the mangroves and the corals who are nearest and the shallow water. And so what I want to do is actually have the mangroves, and then I will have maybe the new jungle leaves spotlights above the mangroves, or the Arcadia, or the Twin Star, which is a very nice freshwater plant light, above the mangroves, and then have one reef strip still in between them, a little bit lower for the corals. But I feel like if I select corals that are like found in between the mangrove roots, or found in the really shallow, like a lot of the softies, the sarcophyton, and you name it. Those are perfect for freshwater lights. They even look better, and I feel my fish also look better in daylight.
No, I mean, the fresh water does look better. I do think, saltwater lighting with the heavy blue light always looks awesome if you put like your orange filter glasses on, but for the keen eye, freshwater lights obviously better. I was just asking because like if you get the mangroves big, and they do get big, at some point they just get all the light, and I was curious how you want to solve that, because there's no light that you can put on top of your tank that goes so hard through the mangrove leaves that it still gets the corals enough energy. Except if you go maybe for like the non-photosynthetic corals that you can, what are they called again? In English they have some sun in the name or something.
Sun corals. I know what you mean. Those are, and there's also some Neptia, pseudo-Neptia, whatever, that are they look like the Kenya trees, whatever, but they're a little bit different, Campanella. And those again are in the natural reefs. Those are actually found on the roots of the mangroves.
Yeah, it makes sense. It does make sense.
Really cool. But that's also why I want to sell this one. Because
what company is that?
This is ATI Stratton. It's German, actually. Beautiful light. I can set.
Awesome light. Yeah. I mean the light. That one is super good.
Yeah, but if my mangroves get too big, then they just cover the light. So I want to have strips, so I can hang a strip in between my mangroves.
I'm super excited to see that at some point, because that is a really cool idea. I've once seen that in a terrarium build, like it was 2.50 meters high or something, and they had like a log in the middle going down, and into the log they basically put in strong LED light panel, so that the plants at the bottom would also still get light. And they had like a crazy canopy at the top, then this log, and then under it they had some really cool low light plants. And I love that setup, because it was so well integrated into, like, you had the whole thing how it would be in the jungle with the canopy and the plants up there that really want the light, and then it gets darker, and in the bottom you kind of cheat with that integrated LED panel, but kind of what you're doing, same idea, just putting another light below the leaves, below the canopy. Really excited to see how that will look in the end. That's an amazing idea.
I hope they will do well. I have 6 mangroves in here now, so there's
they're nice.
These 4, and the ones I put in the substrate do way better as the one I put on the rocks.
Yeah.
And
now it gets dark.
There's the other one. And so that's why I put in more substrate now. For the whole setup. And I put in 2 more pots on this side also. So it's like this if you watch
it's gonna look awesome. When they develop the bigger roots and such, you will have such a nice, really looking like you're snorkeling. Snorkeling in the mangroves, you won't do that, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm
super
really
cool.
looking forward. And there's,
amazing.
There's, how do I say this, a lot of macroalgae. And there's I have it now for the blue stripe pipefish, but one day I want to have like a almost fully pipefish setup. And then I'm gonna put a carpet anemone in here with a pair of clowns.
Also cool.
So I mean, just with the mangroves on the sides, and then one carpet anemone in the middle with that pair.
Will you go for like the normal carpet anemones, or will you go for one of the designer, the sunbeams or so? Because I can tell you in person, go for a designer one. Like, I can also give you a few ideas of which ones, but the sunbeam ones, they cost a little bit more. But dude, if you have like a full tank with those, they look absolutely amazing. It's crazy how good they look. The more expensive NEMs, they really pop. Like, and also if you give them a little bit more blue light or so, they're amazing. But again, super cool setup. I envy you. I want the fucking saltwater again too.
I love it.
Good.
So in the meantime, your light has turned off.
Yes, it is. It is night time.
And I think we had a great conversation. I really enjoyed it. It was really cool. And also, thank you so much for like learning with us, because we are learning this.
Again, an honor to be here. Very nice to talk with you guys. And if you ever, do another podcast where I could be relevant with my chattering, I'm always up for more.
Sounds
I
good.
think we have a lot of topics we could talk to you about. And
Get me in.
thanks for your time. And
My pleasure.
Finn, where can people find you if they are interested in your stuff?
You can definitely find me on Instagram, but please don't ask me about, what aquasoil and akadama is. I fucking hate that question. And I think Instagram is the main source I will still be using. I started a little bit of TikTok also, but that is definitely not my platform. So you can find me on Instagram under my normal name, Finn Conrad, or via my Hexa script name, which is 46_69_6E_6E.
So people just search for Finn Conrad.
I love my fucking name. So many people are throughout the years have said, "Oh, I like your account, but what is this shit name?" I never can remember. And whenever I hear that, it's another, like it makes me stronger with my, can't talk anymore. My choice.
Yeah.
I like my choice even more. It's a good name. 46.
That's the confirmation he needs. He's hating on his stuff and he will keep on going.
You are triggered by what I'm doing? Yes, I'm very triggered. Well, that's awesome. I'm gonna keep doing. Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
You want to end this one too?
Okay, yeah. Then I have to say thank you for your time, Finn. It was a great pleasure. I think we will definitely have you back. And for the listeners, I hope you enjoyed that episode. Please let us know what you think. Smash the like button, even if you don't like the episode. We need that. And leave us a good review.
And comment something, even if you don't have a comment. Just comment anything, just whatever.
Yeah. Maybe you can ask us what aquasoil is, but just let us know.
You're fucking there. Please don't.
We will be back. And thanks to everyone who made it until here.
Thank you for listening. Auf Wiedersehen.
Bye-bye.